Movies based on Christianity have had a resurgence in the last decade, ever since the release of God's Not Dead. There's Pure Flix, which specifically makes movies aimed at the Christian audience, and then even bigger studios have been making movies for the almost untapped market. These movies can range from incredibly preachy to masking itself behind a typical inspirational story. I've been going through all the Sony Animation Studios films, and I guess their fourth film of 2017 was The Star, this all-ages Dove-approved movie that is based on the nativity story from the Bible. I guess even Sony wanted to get their hands on this emerging genre, but among their filmography, this one really sticks out. But does it do justice for the birth of Christ?
Directed by Timothy Reckert, this 2017 adaptation of the Bible tale is about as basic as you can get. It's the story of Jesus being born, but told from the perspective of the animals who accompanied him in the manger. We follow the donkey, Bo, as he gets free of his previous owner and comes into the care of Mary and Joseph, recent newlyweds with an unexpected pregnancy, a baby who will become the Messiah, as foretold by the prophets. This isn't the first time the Bible stories have been told on the big screen. Oftentimes, Hollywood has dug into the two testaments to create often glamorized or romanticized epics. Instead of taking the approach of a religious subtext, they instead use the stories to cast big-name actors, incorporate lavish sets, and rack in millions at the box office from film lovers, which oftentimes includes a high volume of religious moviegoers. They pander to the Christian faith while also being viewed as a big-budget movie, in the cases of The Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, and Passion of the Christ. Just as Christianity has always been ingrained in American history, it has also been ingrained in the film business, but in recent decades, the religious epics have come out in smaller numbers. Then came God's Not Dead, and the culture shifted. Now movies were created by specifically religious companies directly for Christianity's consumption. I'm not going to argue about the intentions of these films or if this kind of business is ethical. I mean, all movies are marketed to a distinct audience, but I do think that these recent additions from the likes of Pure Flix are not easily viewed by non-religious groups. In the case of The Star, I was expecting something that'd be a bit looser by alluding to the religious aspects and simply tell the tale, but really, no matter how they try to cover it up, this is essentially made for the one religious demographic. They invoke many of the biblical themes while holding back on other darker moments. They don't quote lots of scripture, but the summaries are being implied constantly, and in the end, it's not a compelling ending if you don't have a faith-like pull towards the story. Overall, does that make the movie bad? Not necessarily. Just because it goes more the route of VeggieTales than Ten Commandments doesn't mean it automatically becomes a low-ranking movie for non-religious backgrounds. However, there isn't really much else to help it. The characters range from incredibly bland to unbelievably annoying. There's almost no good humor, everything is aimed at the youngest audience imaginable. It's funny that I mentioned VeggieTales because that series always had goofy jokes and songs, all of which are wildly more entertaining than what comes out of The Star. There's story beats that go nowhere. For instance, at one point, Bo is blamed for an incident he didn't mean to cause, which angers the other characters, so he has to go off on his own as he pouts, while cutting off a friend he literally just met, but he ends up changing his mind super quickly, like 5 minutes after, and for almost no reason. He is reminded that he had an ultimate goal, and he goes back. It's only there to make the movie longer than it is. There really isn't a memorable animal to be found, but they're all voiced by big names like Tracy Morgan, Kelly Clarkson, Keegan-Michael Key, Oprah Winfrey, Christopher Plummer, Mariah Carey, and of course, Joel Osteen. They all really stick out though, and I mostly question just how they managed to get all this talent to begin with, but I assume that was the hand of Sony Pictures, who probably had the biggest amount of cash for this production. But the Jim Henson Company was also involved, who had been working on the screenplay ever since the 1995 film Babe was released. Walden Media is also involved because I guess this is based on the book technically, so why wouldn't they be here? There's a few things I like. For instance, this is one of the only nativity adaptations that actually mentions the census portion of the story, which is the exact reason why the inns were packed full. They even fit in the part where King Herod was attempting to kill Mary and the baby. I remember in church that this stuff was always explicitly shared with young children, which is a story for another day, but even for this animation directly aimed at Christian viewers, I'm still surprised they kept this in, no matter how subtle it is. Except I don't remember there being dogs in the Bible. The dogs even get a redemption arc because, let's face it, people love dogs.
Thaddeus, are we good dogs now?
We have to try.
I think this would have been better if they focused more on Mary and Joseph themselves, because their portrayals are pure and sweet, even if Joseph can be a bit of a dick at times. It's presented in a modern way, and I think it's the most effective portion of the film. Either that, or I wish that the Jim Henson Company would have kept developing the screenplay, maybe to make something like Babe, or a puppet version of the story, because either way, I know they would have brought in better humor and a more creative outlook. It's a mixed bag with subpar animation for Sony standards, which yes, I know they technically didn't animate it. It was probably made for a direct-to-video release, but Sony slapped their logo on it anyway, so they get some of the blame now. It has worthwhile renditions of Christmas songs, and even though the animals don't add anything, the story is done with dedication and respect. So for fans of the Bible and younger viewers, it works just fine. But overall, I think it was a missed opportunity.
King of the shoes?
King of the shoes? That's what this is about?
That can't be right.
Thanks to Ryan for this Patreon request, and thanks to all my Patreon supporters. For only $7, you can get your own monthly movie review. Ask me to review anything I haven't already. There's also other perks like blogs, exclusive videos, and early access. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thanks so much for watching this video.